Some invitations aren't meant to be declined, but accepting them costs everything. Ellen DeGeneres built her empire on the image of kindness. But behind the curtain, she ruled through silence, humiliation, and fear. On set, laughter felt like survival. Her jokes never landed, but you laughed anyway because you had to. She invited everyone to her parties. Always her parties. No one ever invited her back. There was a reason. For years, I avoided them. Until the night I gave in. It was supposed to be her birthday. Until I stood in that room with the drink in my hand and all those eyes watching me. That night didn't end when I left. It followed me, and it's still with me now. I used to think landing a writing job on the Ellen DeGeneres Show meant I made it. Not halfway made it. Not good start made it. Made it. Period. I was 28, broke, and running out of reasons to stay in LA. This show wasn't just a gig. It was the golden door. They say Ellen only remembers the writers who make her laugh when she's off camera. I must have done that because 3 weeks after submitting some spec jokes through a friend of a friend, I was in desk badge contract. She liked me a lot. She called me her undercover sniper. Said my jokes hit harder when they were whispered. She even had me punching up material for her stand-up on weekends. The office buzzed every time she walked in. Not in a celebrity way, in a weather shift way. When Ellen entered the floor, conversations broke mid-sentence. Coffee cups froze halfway to mouths. People didn't make eye contact. Not out of fear, exactly. More like management by atmosphere. Ellen didn't yell. She never slammed doors or swore or threw tantrums like other showrunners. But she cut with a smile. Every joke she told in the office came with a hook. Nice shoes, Greg. Did you pick those from the lost and found? Or just lose a bet? I saw your pitch packet. It made me want to go back to therapy. She'd laugh first, you'd laugh second. And if you didn't, you weren't there the next week. I remember one Monday morning, a guy named Lenny was gone. He'd been Ellen's assistant producer for 4 seasons. Always early, always smiling. On Friday, he brought donuts. On Monday, his desk was cleared, monitor wiped, badge deactivated. Nobody talked about it. The next day, someone had already filled his spot. No explanation, just new smiles in old chairs. The first time I heard the phrase, it was from a wardrobe intern. We were in the hallway between Stage B and the dressing rooms. She bumped into me while carrying an armful of blazers, looked up at me with dead serious eyes, and said, "You're new. You still say no." I must have stared. She blinked like she'd just woken up and walked off without another word. But as she turned the corner, I swear I heard her mumble something. We all give in eventually. At first, I brushed it off. Everyone's weird in this business. But then it happened again. On a Wednesday taping, I watched Ellen read a monologue called Cold Off the Prompter, and it was my voice. The rhythm, the callbacks, even the phrasing. But I didn't write it. I asked another writer if they'd submitted it for me. He just looked at me like I was speaking another language and changed the subject. No one would say who wrote it. Then came the party invitations. They started soft, a casual. You should come to my birthday party. Everyone goes. I declined politely. She laughed like I'd told a joke. The next week, she leaned in during rehearsal and whispered, "Work happens at the party. You want that promotion, don't you?" The week after that, she made a joke on stage during a segment about dreams and hard work. She pointed to me off camera and said, "Some people think they can stay in the waiting room and still get invited through the gold door. Bless their hearts." The audience laughed. I didn't. A few days later, I ran into Javier, one of the senior writers who'd been there since the 3rd season. He was chain-smoking in the loading dock behind the lot. Said he wasn't coming back next cycle. "She offered you a cup yet?" I blinked. "What?" "You'll know it when it happens. My advice, don't drink it, even if it's gold. Especially if it's gold." He dropped the butt and walked off. That was the last time I saw him. The morning of Ellen's birthday, she called me into her dressing room. She was in a silk robe, eyes fixed on the vanity. "Tonight," she said without turning. "No excuses. No more hiding. You're ready." I should have said no again. But something about the way she said it, like a command disguised as a compliment, made my stomach turn. This job was my dream. I wasn't ready to wake up yet. So I smiled, nodded, and said, "I'll be there." The birthday invitation sat in my back pocket like a live wire. Every time I shifted in my seat, I felt it. Folded cardstock with Ellen's looping script on the front. Wear black. Bring nothing. Leave different. By Friday, the office had entered its quiet phase. That happened before all her parties. Chatter died down. People walked faster. Everyone avoided direct eye contact. It was like they knew something was coming but refused to name it. The day before the party, I stayed late. Ellen wanted last-minute punch-ups on a segment for the Jonas Brothers. I finished and headed down the hall towards Stage B, thinking maybe I'd drop the script on her dressing room desk and sneak out. That's when I saw her. She was standing alone in the hallway, motionless. At first, I thought she was waiting on someone, but no one else was around. Her body was turned slightly toward the wall, but her head was angled toward me. Her mouth was slack, and something thick was trailing from her bottom lip. It took me a second to realize she was drooling, her eyes locked on mine. But they weren't right. The color was gone. They were completely black, like someone had filled them with ink. No whites, no shine, just void. We all give in. She said it like a sigh, her voice lower than I'd ever heard it. I froze. My hand tightened around the script pages. Then just like that, she blinked.
The drool vanished.
Her eyes were blue again, bright, empty. "You finished the intro for Jennifer yet?" she said, chipper as ever, walking past me like nothing had happened. I stood there long after she was gone, script still in my hand, heart hammering behind my ribs. The next morning, Daniel, one of our newer comedy researchers, didn't show up. He'd been in charge of organizing Ellen's flashback clips, always made her laugh with old bloopers. Nice guy, reliable, gone. No word, no warning. His desk was cleaned out by 10 a.m. A new guy was in his chair before lunch. I asked around, but nobody had seen him. It was like he'd evaporated. That afternoon, I walked past Ellen's office and heard her laughing. Not her usual laugh. It was deeper, slower, like someone was pushing her laughter through molasses. Someone was in there with her. A group, maybe muffled voices. And every few seconds, in unison, they said something. I stopped, pressed my ear against the door. Be kind. Be kind. Be kind. Over and over. Perfect rhythm. Mechanical. I stepped back from the door and nearly collided with Stephanie, the talent liaison. She looked pale. "Don't listen when they chant," she whispered. "You can't unhear it." I tried to quit that night, typed up a short email, "Thank you," grateful, moving on, and hovered over the send button. Then I remembered Ellen's face, not the one with the black eyes, the other one. The one that looked at me like I was chosen. A part of me wanted to believe the drool was stress, a hallucination. Maybe I was overt tired. And that's what Hollywood does, right? It bends reality until you don't know what's real and what's expected. That night, Javier texted me. The same guy from the loading dock, the one who'd warned me. All it said was, "Still time to say no. If you drink it, it won't be you laughing anymore." I didn't reply. Instead, I pulled the invitation from my desk drawer and opened it again. Wear black. Bring nothing. Leave different. Somewhere deep in my chest, something flickered. Fear maybe, or curiosity. The night of the party, I stood outside the gates for a long time before buzzing in. The property was enormous. An estate tucked behind hedges, perched on the edge of a canyon. A place with no address visible from the street. The gate opened before I even touched the intercom. There were no cars, no music, no chatter, just dim lights winding up the driveway. And somewhere in the distance, the sound of glasses clinking. I adjusted my black shirt and stepped through the gate. I wasn't ready. I thought I was, but no one's ever ready for what happens inside that house. The house was unnaturally quiet. No valet, no staff, no music, just the soft crunch of gravel under my shoes as I walked up the driveway. Each step echoed in the silence, like I wasn't just arriving. I was being watched. The front door was already open, not wide, just cracked, as if the house had been expecting me. I hesitated, then stepped inside. The foyer was dimly lit with gold fixtures that looked melted. The air smelled faintly like honey and something older, like parchment or dust that had been sealed for years. A butler appeared soundlessly, wearing all black, his eyes cast down. "She's waiting," he said, and gestured me down the hallway. I followed the curve of the hall until I reached a room that opened into what looked like a ballroom, though the lights were low and there was no music. And that's when I saw them. They stood along the walls, perfectly spaced, almost like portraits. Oprah in a black dress, her arms folded across her chest. Steven Spielberg holding a wine glass, not sipping. George Clooney, Tyler Perry, Jay-Z, Beyoncé, even a former president stood at the far end, nodding to no one. They didn't speak. They didn't smile. They just watched. Ellen was in the center of the room, facing away from me, dressed in a deep black suit, sharp, tailored, and unnervingly clean. Her hair was slicked back, and in her hand, she held something small and gold. As I stepped in, she turned. Her smile was wide, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You made it." She walked over and held out a porcelain teacup with a gold rim. It shimmered faintly, even in the low light. "This," she said, "is the moment. Everyone gets one. Only the chosen drink. Once you sip, you'll feel it. The chain breaking. The door opening. Your real career starts tonight." I looked at the cup. The liquid inside was thick and golden, swirling unnaturally, even though I wasn't moving it like it was alive. Behind Ellen, the others stepped forward, silently, forming a semicircle. Oprah, Clooney, Beyoncé, all watching me, expressionless, expectant. I held the cup, my fingers trembling. It was heavier than it looked, warm, as if it had just been poured. But there were no drinks anywhere else in the room. "You said you wanted to succeed," Ellen whispered. "This is how you stop waiting for someone else's yes." I looked around the room, heart pounding. That's when it started. First, just a whisper. "Be kind." Then again, "Be kind." Then louder, unified. "Be kind. Be kind. Be kind." Over and over. A dozen voices, then 2 dozen. Then more. All of them chanting in perfect rhythm. Oprah's lips moved in sync. Jay-Z's, even the former president. Their eyes fixed on me. Their mouths repeating the phrase like it was holy scripture. "Be kind. Be kind. Be kind." The air vibrated with the sound. But it didn't feel kind. It felt hungry. I turned back to Ellen. Her eyes were black again. But now she was drooling. A long, clear strand stretched from her lower lip to her chin. Her smile twitched wider than before, unnaturally wide. And she kept whispering beneath the chant. "We all give in." Eventually, the chanting got louder. "Be kind. Be kind. Be kind." I raised the cup. My hand shook. I stared at the liquid. For a second, I wanted it. The freedom, the success, the knowing I'd never be a nobody again. I could see it. My name and credits I hadn't even written. The private jet invites, the awards, the applause. All I had to do was drink. But then I looked again at their eyes. At how none of them blinked, how none of them had moved in the last 5 minutes. And something clicked. They weren't watching to see me succeed. They were watching to see if I'd break. I lowered the cup, stepped back, then dropped it. It shattered on the marble floor, splashing the golden liquid across Ellen's shoes. The chanting stopped. For a second, there was nothing but silence. And then a smile twitched on Ellen's face. Not rage, not disappointment, something else. Satisfaction. I turned and ran through the hall, past the butler, out the door. The night air hit my lungs like water after drowning. My legs didn't stop until I reached my car at the base of the driveway. As I opened the door, something made me turn back. And there they were, all of them standing in the doorway, silent, still, smiling, watching me go. I didn't go back to work. Didn't resign either. I just stopped showing up. There were no angry emails, no calls, not even a text from HR. It was like I'd never existed. One day, my ID badge worked. The next, it didn't. No one asked why. No one reached out, not even Ellen. The day after the party, I stayed in bed. The sun felt wrong on my skin. I replayed everything. The drool, the chant, the way they stared at me like I'd interrupted something ancient. For a week, I didn't leave the apartment. Then the news hit. The Writer Guild announced a strike. Effective immediately. All shows would go dark. Picket were forming. Writers were demanding fairness. But the timing, it felt orchestrated, like the party was a final test and I'd failed. I started reaching out to contacts, old showrunners, streaming producers, indie film folks. No one returned my emails. One exec I'd worked with before finally answered. Sorry, I can't be attached to you right now. You pissed someone off. Big. When I asked who, he hung up. For the first time in my life, I couldn't write. Not a sketch, not a scene, not a line of dialogue. Every time I opened a blank document, I heard it. That chant, be kind, be kind, be kind. It followed me into dreams, into showers, even into the moments where I thought I was healing. Rent got harder. I started freelancing on spec pilots, low-paying, no-credit stuff for upstart companies, and desperate showrunners trying to get greenlit. It was work, but it felt hollow, like I was riding through glass. Sometimes I caught myself wondering, what if I'd said yes? What if I'd taken the drink? Would I be on a yacht right now? Would I be the one whispering, be kind to the next poor kid with a dream? It wasn't until a few months later that I noticed the people around me changing. An actor I knew, decent guy, barely scraping by, landed a Marvel role overnight. No audition, just got it. I called to congratulate him. It's wild, man, he said. You just have to show up to the right party. Then he paused. You should have come when you had the chance. I didn't know how he knew, but he did. The paranoia set in quietly. At first, I thought I saw Ellen's face in a billboard reflection, then again in a car window on Sunset. Then I stopped using mirrors altogether for a few days that I knew it was irrational. I knew I was spiraling. But that's the thing no one tells you about saying no to them. You don't just lose a job. You lose the version of you they were going to let exist. One night, I was walking back from a gas station run. 3 a.m. half awake, and I passed a homeless man curled up on the sidewalk near my block. He opened one eye as I stepped past and whispered, "We all give in." I froze, turned, but he was already asleep again. I started seeing the pattern. The ones who said yes, they were all shiny, glossed over smiles, unnatural posture, always laughing, but never laughing at anything real. Like their mouths remembered how, but their souls had forgotten why. A year passed. Then, too, the world moved on. Ellen's show ended. A public fall from grace. Articles about toxic behavior, cancel culture, exit interviews. But I didn't feel relief because I knew that wasn't the end. It was a costume change, a new stage. The real play always happened off camera. Sometimes I still hear her voice when I'm half asleep or standing in line at CVS or watching the blank cursor blink on an empty script page.
You're ready.
Drink, be kind, and worst of all, we all give in eventually. I moved twice, different cities, different coasts, changed my number, scrubbed my credits from IMDb, started telling people I wrote ads for furniture stores. Hollywood forgot me. And that was the point. Sometimes I'd see Ellen's name trending, usually bad press, a behind-the-scenes documentary, a staffer's memoir. Those articles would light up for a day, then vanish, just like the staffers had. But I knew better than to click. That wasn't news. That was fate. I settled into freelance work, punching up sitcom pilots, ghostwriting stand-up bits for washed-up comics, trying to rebrand. I kept my head down, paid my rent, ate cheap. Every time I passed a mirror, I checked my eyes. Still mine, still normal, still alone. Then last week it arrived. Nonak. No email confirmation, just a small box sitting neatly at the edge of my welcome mat like it belonged there. The label was handwritten, just my name, no address, no postage. I brought it inside like an idiot. It was heavier than I expected. The kind of heavy that feels intentional, weighted, like it was meant to be held. Inside was a porcelain teacup, white with a gold rim, slightly chipped, the same kind Ellen had handed me the night of her party. No note, no explanation, just the cup, immaculate, uncracked, like it had never shattered, like it had followed me. I turned it over in my hands, checking for some kind of prank branding. Maybe a cruel joke from an old coworker. That's when I saw the writing. It wasn't on paper. It was scratched into the underside of the cup in delicate, perfect cursive. Be kind and give in. My hands went cold. I dropped the cup into the sink and backed away. Watched it sit there under the faucet like it was still waiting for me to finish what I started. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound in the apartment felt closer. Every creak in the walls sounded like her voice. The next morning, I opened my front door to get air and found another box, smaller this time. Inside, a single matchstick and a note. This one was plain printer paper, folded once, no signature. Burn it if you're sure. But remember, the door doesn't close, it waits. That's the thing no one tells you. It's not just about saying no. It's about what they leave behind when you do. Some nights, I still dream I'm back on set. Ellen's holding out the cup, drooling, grinning, and I don't drop it this time. I drink and suddenly everyone's clapping. My phone's ringing with offers. I'm laughing louder than I've ever laughed because now I understand the joke. But when I wake up, I'm still here, still me, still haunted. And the cup is still in my kitchen cabinet. I didn't burn it. I couldn't because part of me, the part that almost said yes, still wonders what if, and that's the truth no one wants to admit. Ellen didn't make me a victim. She made me a question. And that question follows me everywhere I go. They call it kindness, but it's hunger. And I still hear it whispering at night.